I'm out here in India right now, and after taking all those flights to get here, that made me start to wonder, what does my carbon footprint look like in an average year? And listen, I care about the environment and stopping climate change a lot. Like, a lot. I mean, it's the whole reason I have this channel. But I am not perfect. I have a decently sized carbon footprint, and that's the point of this video. All of us do. In this video, I will be breaking down approximately how much I pollute in an average year of my life, using last year as the example, in an effort to show just how much seemingly little things may be adding up to create a far larger effect. And let's start off with an obvious category. Driving. To do this, I tried to think about all the major driving trips I did in the last year. And boy, there were a decent amount of them. I live in the Washington, D.C. area, and in this past year, I visited my girlfriend's family in St. Louis twice. Now that means 2 round trips, so actually 4 legs of that journey. Similarly, my family lives in New Jersey, and I went up there 6 times, so 12 legs. I also went down to North Carolina a lot because my girlfriend was living there last year. That accounted for about 12 trips, so 24 legs total. The trip from DC to St. Louis is about 815 miles. Multiply this by 2 for one journey, there and back, and multiply that by 2 again, since I did this twice, to get 3,260 miles. Heading to New Jersey from DC is about 193 miles. Multiply this by 2 to get 1 round trip, and multiply that by 6 for the number of times that I did it to get 2,316 miles. North Carolina from DC is about 280 miles, times 2 for 1 round trip, and then times 12 for the approximate number of times that I did this, for a total of 6,720 miles. I'm gonna add to this an extra 500 miles to account for odds and ends driving around town for stores and such, bringing the grand total to 12,796 miles for the year. I actually can't tell if that's more or less than I would think. So what does this translate to? The EPA estimates that the average passenger vehicle emits about 400 grams of CO2 per mile. So last year, I emitted 5,118,400 grams of CO2, or 5,118.4 kilograms of CO2 in the last year. Wow, that is interesting. I obviously mentioned that I'm out here in India right now, so what about another very important category? Flying. I travel a decent amount. I like to visit friends and family and go on adventures. I'm actually editing this on a plane right now. Last year, I estimated all of my flights to add up to about 20,000 nautical miles. The National Energy Foundation gives an estimate of about 0.29 kilograms of CO2 per passenger per mile. So that gives me another 5,800 kilograms of CO2. Interesting how close together my driving and flying numbers are. While this may seem like a lot, and believe me, for me, it does, thankfully, I don't actually do much else besides this. I only try to buy clothing secondhand. I don't do much shopping in general outside of groceries. I never use Amazon. I try to be a very conscientious consumer and thoroughly research products beforehand. And I'm a vegetarian. So, given all of that, I'm not really sure there's too much more that I can kind of tack on here. Of course, there's so much estimation and so many nearly intangible details that go into this. I consume groceries and food like anybody else, but those have to get to my store somehow, right? How are those emissions divvied up amongst consumers? Say there's a truck carrying 1,000 cabbages emitting 50 kilograms of CO2 on its journey, and I buy one of those cabbages, so I am assigned 50 grams of CO2 for this cabbage? Of course, I'm making those numbers up, and it would be quite difficult to measure life cycle emissions of things such as this and then assign them to individuals. And then there's electricity, which is very different depending on where you live, percentages of renewable energy generation, etc. But you see my point. Perhaps let's just tack on 1,000 more kilograms of CO2 to account for those little things, just for good measure. This may be an overestimation given my sustainable practices in my day-to-day life, but I'm happy with it. Better to over than underestimate. With all of this taken into account, we are looking at a whopping grand total of, it's a drum roll noise, drum roll, 11,918.4 kilograms of CO2 per year. Yay? According to this chart, the US per capita CO2 emissions per year is currently about 15 tons, or about 13,600 kilograms. So I'm slightly below average? Yay, I guess? Though, to be completely fair, it's very important to note that people in developed nations such as the US and Canada have a far larger per capita CO2 emissions rate than the rest of the world. A far larger one. This is due to the highly impactful lifestyle of somebody in a developed nation, yes, but specifically and most importantly, cars and planes. The US and Canada are massive. Additionally, the public transportation here is essentially non-existent. If you are trying to go from point A to point B, you have two options: drive or fly. This is unlike in many places around the world, in which trains and buses abound and can move you around with a significantly lower environmental impact. This is actually one of the reasons I'm seriously considering moving to Europe. The good news is, in the US, this number seems to be on the decline. Of course, my number is high and way higher than I would like for it to be, but that is good to know. I've been wanting to purchase an electric car for a while, and with the grid finally in a spot where vehicle-to-grid connections, or V2G, can help support renewable energy penetration to the grid, as well as the grid being cleaner in general, perhaps now is a good time to do so. Unfortunately, the current US administration has rolled back or revoked a lot of electric car incentives, but hopefully those will come back soon. As for plane travel, it's simply to try to fly less. And this is a very tricky one for me, because I love to travel. I love to see the world, experience new things, learn more about this incredible planet and the people who inhabit it. Without my travel experiences, I would not care so much about the environment and the climate crisis, and I would probably not be working in climate tech as I am now or doing these videos. So the indirect and intangible value of these experiences is quite high, but it's still definitely something that I struggle with justifying and rationalizing. For a little extra math if you're curious, CO2 currently makes up 422.7 ppm, or parts per million, of our atmosphere. ppm is used for very small amounts, so to convert this to a traditional percentage, we need to divide by 10,000, because ppm shows per million, as it says, but we effectively want per 100, or our ordinary concept of a percentage. In fact, just think about the word percent. Per cent. For/by 100. Once we do this, we get 0.04227%. So CO2 comprises 0.04227% of our atmosphere. This may not seem like a lot, but pre-industrial, about 1750 and earlier, CO2 levels were approximately 280 ppm, or 0.028%. And this increase has only gotten sharper. So how do we compare my kilograms of CO2 per year with all of that in the atmosphere? Well, Earth's atmosphere is approximately 5 times 10 to the 18th kilograms. So that means there is about 2.11 times 10 to the 15th kilograms of CO2 in the atmosphere. If we subtract 422.7 by 280 to get the human-caused, or anthropogenic, CO2 in the atmosphere, we get 142.7 ppm. Multiply this, and we get that 7.135 times 10 to the 14th kilograms of CO2 in the atmosphere is anthropogenic. Take my annual CO2 amount, 11,918.4 kilograms, and then divide it by this to get the percentage of anthropogenic CO2 that was directly caused by my existence in the last year. 1.67 times 10 to the negative 11th, or 0.00000000167%. So what's the lesson? Well, simply put, I would say it's this. It's difficult to tell people to stop living. And ideally, we shouldn't have to. If I were not here, 11,918.4 kilograms of CO2 would not have been emitted in the last year. Taken to an extreme, if nobody were here, an almost unfathomable amount of CO2 would not have been emitted in the last year. But we are here. Now, I'm the first person to say that we all need to try to limit our impact on the environment to avoid our careening towards disaster. However, everyone has to pick and choose where and how they have an impact. And, crucially, the sole burden for this should not be placed onto the backs of individuals. I travel a lot, I know. But some of this is for work directly pertaining to the environment. Some of this is to visit family. Some of this is just for ordinary work. Outside of this, I try to live my life very sustainably and with minimal impact. On the flip side, some other people don't travel often, don't fly much, don't drive much, but they may also live their life in a way which has no regard for the environment. I work in climate. I work on this channel, I clean up garbage, I volunteer with environmental organizations, but I still travel a lot. Everybody has to pick and choose. But on top of all of this, I want to really emphasize something. Individual action is very important. However, voting for policies, supporting politicians, and trying to push corporations to have more sustainable practices is very important because we need large-scale change as well. Corporations are the ones who often try and push the narrative of you need individual action to change this, you need to do this yourself, because they don't want to change because it'll hurt their profit margin. In some sense, I try not to take that too personally or get too upset about it. I mean, they are a for-profit organization. That's what they're after. But at the same time, you can't expect people to just live their lives with no regard for morals in any sense of their business practices. We need to try and hold these corporations and these people accountable for these things. It's important to remember that there's another action you can take as an individual. Large-scale change happens because individuals demand it. Together, both with our actions, as well as our words and the things in which we support, things we care about, and the ways in which we make our voices heard, we can make a difference. Thank you very much for watching. Perhaps you learned something. Maybe you'll try to calculate your own footprint just for fun. And anyway, please do subscribe. It helps. Like the video, whatever. I'll see you next time. Ciao.